The Philippine archipelago consists of more than 7,000 islands. Combined, they form one of the world's primary mega-diverse global biodiversity hotspots. Because these landmasses are geographically isolated, they act as independent evolutionary laboratories. The southern island of Mindanao, in particular, is a focal point for unique branches of evolution, hosting species found nowhere else on Earth. Among the most critical groups within this ecosystem are amphibians and reptiles, collectively termed Herpetofauna. These animals share a core biological trait that makes them ideal study subjects. They are exothermic. They rely on external environmental sources to regulate their body temperature. This reliance makes them highly sensitive barometers for microclimate stability. If their environment degrades, their populations react with a speed that internal regulators often mask in other animals. In 2016, a field inventory sought to measure this sensitivity. The target was the Herpetofaunal Natural Park in Bukidnon, a prominent mountain system towering over the surrounding agricultural plains. By tracking these sensitive creatures across the slopes, researchers can map the exact boundaries of where ecosystem stability holds firm and where it begins to fail. To test this gradient, researchers established a direct comparative analysis between two adjacent but distinct forest zones. The first plot is the lower montane forest, situated at an elevation of 1,200 to 1,400 meters above sea level. Directly above it is the second plot, the upper montane forest, spanning 1,400 to 1,600 meters. These two ecological plots are separated by a mere 2 to 3 kilometers of walking distance. Data collection required rigorous methodologies across both diurnal and nocturnal cycles, combining pitfall traps to capture ground-dwelling species with direct visual encounters in the canopy. The inventory yielded a total of 202 individuals, spanning 15 different species of Herpetofauna. Despite sharing a physical border, these two zones support radically different biological communities. Of the 15 total species recorded, only 4 were found to inhabit both the upper and lower plots. To quantify this divide, ecologists use the Decode Similarity Index. This mathematical tool measures the exact biological overlap between two distinct communities. When the data from the two plots is plugged into the formula, the calculation outputs a Decode index of just 26%. For two forest zones that share a direct physical border, 26% overlap is exceptionally low. It indicates a severe separation in the types of animals that inhabit each zone. This stratification suggests that the amphibians and reptiles here are tied to specific microhabitat requirements, where subtle shifts in humidity or temperature act as biological barriers. The upper montane zone provides these specific conditions through an undisturbed canopy and a thick, mature layer of leaf litter. The native lithocarpus vegetation and rotting fallen logs act as critical structural infrastructure for the reptiles in this pot. The endemic skink Pinoycincus mindanensis thrives here, utilizing this intact primary forest structure for both food and shelter. However, the upper plot data contained an anomaly, a severe and unexpected lack of aquatic amphibians. A severe El Niño drought had dried out the upper riverbeds prior to sampling. This suggests that temporary climate anomalies can override structural habitat advantages and alter local diversity. Down the mountain in the lower montane zone, the environment transitions into an agroforestry landscape with steeper slopes and a mix of cultivated plants. Unlike the drought-stricken upper slopes, this lower plot features the continuous flow of the Bogweek Econ River, which maintained its water volume despite the El Niño weather pattern. Because of this persistent water source, a large frog species known as Limnonectus magnus dominates the lower zone numerically, representing over 30% of all individuals captured there. The river acts as a localized refugia, creating a microhabitat lifeline that sustains amphibian populations despite surrounding human disturbance. Another frog found in this lower zone, the Mindanao flying frog, illustrates a different type of fluidity, one involving its taxonomic classification. In the published 2017 study data, this specimen is documented under the Rhacophoridae family as Rhacophorus b maculatus. However, a subsequent taxonomic revision split this genus, moving this specific frog into the newly revived group, Leptomantis. This reclassification reflects a broader shift in Philippine herpetology, where new genetic and morphological data frequently redraw the branches of the evolutionary tree. The lower montane exists as a tension between biological resilience in the river and the encroaching pressure of human activity. Moving from individual species to the aggregate data, the biodiversity indices derived from the study show the impact of that pressure. This chart compares the exact diversity outputs. The upper montane scores a Mennonics index of 1.98 and a Shannon-Weiner index of 1.94. In the lower montane, those numbers drop to 0.61 and 1.73. This statistical drop at the lower elevation illustrates the edge effect, where habitat quality deteriorates at the boundaries of human interaction. The physical manifestation of this disturbance is the conversion of primary forest into cleared agricultural land. Agriculture brings secondary threats. During dry spells, these exposed mountain slopes become highly vulnerable to forest fires, rapidly destroying the remaining habitat. Furthermore, the river systems face the threat of punguryente, the practice of electrofishing by locals, which can kill eggs and tadpoles in the water column. Establishing a natural park boundary on a map does little if the biological collapse continues at the ecosystem's physical edge. The global stakes of this data are clear. 5 of the species found in these vulnerable edge zones belong on the IUCN Red List of threatened species. There is often a disconnect between international threat matrices and the reality of preservation. A designation in a database does not stop a fire on a slope. The solution in Mount Kalatungan operates at the community level through the Bantai Lasang or Forest Guard program. Indigenous and local governance provides the enforcement layer that international bodies cannot, putting authority directly into the forest. The local tribal council imposes immediate economic penalties for illegal hunting, charging violators a fine of 500 pesos and 1 pig. For domestic logging, the community requires strict restitution. Anyone cutting a single tree must first plant 5 new ones to replace it. Preserving a mega-diverse hotspot relies on defending fragile 200-meter elevational microgradients through hyperlocal, community-driven conservation.